Once upon a time, in Baghdad, there lived a man known across the world as Sindbad the Sailor. He was wealthy, respected, and lived in a magnificent palace. Among his servants was a poor labourer who shared the same name, Sindbad. One evening, exhausted from work, the servant looked at the rich sailor and wondered, how can two men have the same name, yet such different lives? Noticing his sadness, Sindbad the Sailor called him closer. "What troubles you, my friend?" he asked. The servant bowed respectfully before Sindbad. "My lord," he said, "we bear the same name, yet destiny has written very different stories for us. You live in a magnificent palace, admired by all, while I spend my days burdened by hardship and poverty. How did fate lead you to such extraordinary fortune?" Sindbad smiled. "Do you think this wealth came easily?" he asked. "Do you think fortune simply placed these treasures in my hands?" The servant remained silent. "No," Sindbad said. "Every coin in this palace has a story. Every treasure you see was earned through hardship. I have crossed dangerous seas, survived deadly storms, been stranded on lonely islands, and faced death more times than I can count." The servant stared in disbelief. Sindbad laughed softly. "Come, sit beside me, and I will tell you the story of my great voyages." The servant sat eagerly at his side. As the evening breeze swept through the garden, Sindbad began his tale. "Many years ago, when I was young and foolish, I inherited a great fortune. I had more wealth than most men could dream of. But I wasted it. I spent recklessly, chased pleasures, and bought things I did not need. I believed my riches would last forever. One morning, I looked at my accounts and felt fear for the first time. My fortune was nearly gone. If I continued this way, I would soon be a beggar. That day changed my life. I sold what remained of my possessions and used the money to buy goods for trade. Then I joined a group of merchants preparing for a long voyage across the sea. And soon our ship sailed from the harbour toward the unknown. As Baghdad disappeared beyond the horizon, I felt both excitement and fear. I had no idea my first adventure would nearly cost me my life. For weeks, the voyage was perfect. Then, one day, everything changed. The wind died. The sea fell silent. Our ship drifted almost motionless. Ahead of us lay a small green island. It looked peaceful. After many days at sea, the sailors eagerly went ashore to rest. We lit a fire, prepared food, and laughed together. Then the ground trembled. Once, then again much harder. Uneasy glances spread among the sailors. Suddenly, a terrified scream came from the ship. It was the captain. His face was white with fear. "Run! Run for your lives! That is not an island!" The sailors froze. The captain pointed at the ground beneath our feet. "It's a giant whale! The fire has awakened it!" Panic exploded. The island was no island at all. It was the back of an enormous whale sleeping on the surface of the sea. The creature began to move. Massive waves crashed around us.
Men screamed and raced for the ship. Others leaped straight into the water. I ran as fast as I could, but it was too late. With a violent surge, the whale plunged beneath the sea. The island vanished. I was hurled into the freezing ocean. Water swallowed me. I fought desperately to stay afloat. Around me, sailors cried out for help. In the chaos, the ship rescued those it could and sailed away. No one realized I was missing. And for the first time in my life, I was completely alone in the middle of the sea. The endless ocean stretched in every direction. No land, no ship, no rescue. By sheer luck, I found a floating piece of wood and clung to it. All day, the waves carried me across the sea. The sun burned above me. My body weakened. As darkness fell, I feared I would never see Baghdad again. But somehow, I survived the night. When morning came, I opened my eyes and saw something unbelievable. Land. A small island stood on the horizon. Hope returned. With the last of my strength, I fought the waves and reached the shore. Exhausted and barely able to stand, I pulled myself onto the island. I was alive. For the first time since the whale had disappeared beneath the sea, I felt safe. Then I collapsed from exhaustion. Hours later, I awoke, weak, exhausted, and starving. I searched the island and found fresh water, fruits, and edible plants. Slowly, my strength returned. As I explored further, I suddenly froze. Before me stood a magnificent horse, tied to a wooden stake. I could hardly believe my eyes. How could a horse exist on a deserted island? Then, I heard something even more surprising. Human voices. Moments later, several men suddenly appeared before me. Relief washed over me. At last, I had found people. After hearing my story, the men exchanged astonished glances. One of them smiled. "You are fortunate," he said. "We serve King Mirage and bring the king's horses here each year. If we had not found you, you might never have escaped this island." The next day, they took me to their kingdom. King Mirage welcomed me warmly, and, after hearing my story, provided me with food, clothing, and a place to stay. For many months, I lived comfortably in his kingdom. Yet my heart longed for Baghdad. Every day, I visited the harbour, hoping for a ship bound for home. Then, one morning, fate finally smiled upon me. A merchant ship arrived. As its cargo was unloaded, I noticed several packages marked with a familiar symbol. My symbol. My heart raced. They were my goods, the very goods I had loaded before the whale disaster. Then I saw the captain. The same captain who believed I had drowned. I approached him. "Captain," I asked, "who owns those goods?" He sighed. "They belonged to a merchant named Sindbad. He was lost at sea when a giant whale sank beneath the waves. I intend to sell them and send the money to his family." I smiled. "Captain, I am Sindbad." The captain stared in disbelief. "Impossible," he said. "I saw Sindbad disappear into the ocean." Patiently, I told him what happened after the whale vanished beneath the sea, how I survived on drifting wood, reached a distant island, and was rescued by the servants of King Mirage. When I finished, The captain embraced me. "By heaven," he cried, "it truly is you!" The sailors cheered, the merchants celebrated, and at last my goods were returned to me. Before leaving, I presented valuable gifts to King Mirage. The king accepted them graciously and rewarded me with treasures of his own. Soon, I boarded a ship and continued my travels. This time, fortune favored me. My trading ventures were successful, and with each journey, my wealth grew. When I finally returned to Baghdad, I was wealthier than ever before. I bought a grand house and lived in comfort. Sindbad paused. That, my friend, was the story of my first voyage. The servant sat speechless. Now he understood. Sindbad's wealth had not come from luck. It had been earned through courage, sacrifice, and surviving when death seemed certain. But Sindbad was not finished. A faint smile crossed his face as he gazed toward the dark horizon. What you have heard tonight was only my first voyage. The sea had far greater wonders and far greater dangers waiting for me. On my next journey, I would face a creature so enormous that its wings could block out the sun. And I would discover a valley filled with diamonds, a place where entering was easy, but escaping alive was nearly impossible. The servant leaned forward eagerly. What happened next? Sindbad smiled.